The goal for the program is to facilitate a meaningful learning experience and discussion that is engaging and helpful to professionals within HR, OD, and learning and development, focusing on learning and development. The format for our event will allow each panelist to share their experience in collecting and presenting data to show the overall impact learning and development is having within the organization. Once we hear from both of our panelists today, we're going to open up to the audience for questions. Again, please type any questions you have for our panelists in the Q&A box. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Nicole with Prior Learning Solutions. As a continuous learner, I really feel engaged and empowered learning from the experience and wisdom of my network, as well as sharing my experience that I've gained through over 20 years in sales, marketing, and operations management. And the topic today hits home pretty well. The very first job I had out of college, I was in data analytics, worked with a number of organizations on performance and improvement, helping them with the reporting functions internally, both for teams as well as for the organization as a whole. The journey of development events is a way for me to continue my own personal development and support others with their development and growth. Through Prior, I work as a consultant to organizations to improve communication, collaboration, and culture across all levels of the organization through our customized programs that are designed specifically to meet strategic learning goals for each organization we work with. When it comes to data and analytics, I think we're a little different than others in the marketplace. We take a hands-on approach to help each of our partners with what it is they need, or if they need it, not only with the reports themselves, but taking it a step further if they need some additional guidance. So this is a very interesting topic, I believe, for me and hopefully for everybody that's on the call. Our first panelist today is going to be Siobhan Curran. She is the manager of global technical training at Kronos. In her role, she oversees the learning, solutions, and enablement for global workforce of engineers, technology, architects, program, and product managers. Siobhan has over 20 years of extensive experience in learning strategy, educational technology, and learning analytics. She began her career as an educational technologist in the higher education market with Pearson Education and Thomson Learning. Siobhan moved into the corporate learning sector to expand her experience and meet the unique needs of the corporate learner. She has recently focused on the use of analytics to drive learning solutions and learning content governance and management. She has received her bachelor's degree from Boston College and has completed coursework toward a master's degree in education and instructional design at UMass Boston. She became a certified professional in training management with the training industry in 2015. With that, are you ready to take it away, Siobhan?
Yes, Nicole, I am. Thank you. And then did you want to put the poll up?
I do.
So I want to get an idea from you in the audience what your data sources are when you're working on analytics. You may not even have an analytics program because I just started at Kronos 6 weeks ago and we have no analytics program, but I have created and implemented analytics programs in the past. So I'm starting at ground zero right now, but I do want to get a sense from you what sources of data you have available to you when you are learning, you are using for your analytics solutions.
So the polling is still coming in pretty actively here.
Okay.
It looks like learning management systems leading the way. Second is assessment tool, but the numbers are still climbing.
Okay.
So we have 65% learning management, 35% assessment tool, 15% knowledge base, and 5% project management tool.
And do you have any response? We have no learning analytics program?
We have nobody answered no.
That's excellent.
No, nothing, 0 on the agile management tool and 0 on Google Analytics.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, well, so today I'm just looking to you as anyone who wants to share information about how to harness learning data and make it actionable and meaningful. And my goal really is to share ideas and strategies for making sense of some of the data you have available to you. I'm going to talk about 3 things, what I use as the pillar of analytics in my organization, talk about three impactful data points that I have discovered along the way that have been very useful to me in communicating to the business and demonstrating value. And then I just have a slide that makes recommendations on, you know, best practices around data harnessing. So the first international conference on learning analytics and knowledge defined the term learning analytics as the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of data about learners in their contexts for purposes of understanding and optimizing learning and the environment in which it occurs. So I pulled this statement out because I had to write a paper on analytics, and I was doing some research. And the thing that strikes me about this statement is that it doesn't talk about any ROI or value or business related solution. And it's very simplistic. And for those of you like myself who grapple with all my different data sources and trying to make sense of it all, it is definitely simplistic. When I look at data and analytics in my organization, so I'm new to this organization, but in the past organization, and the approach that I'm taking right now as I build an analytics program is I look at it in terms of there's 4 pillars of analytics. The first pillar being efficiency. So, and when I say efficiency, taking data to look at how efficiently I'm managing my resources, if I'm meeting my commitments in terms of delivery dates in developing learning, and how the uptake on my learners are my learners able to take our training efficiently, and is the uptake where we've said it would be. Then I look at learner engagement, and learner engagement includes not only is my learner taking a certain percentage of what I'm offering, but really how are they getting there? Are they putting search terms in and getting to what they need to know as soon as within 3 clicks or within the amount of time that they should? Are they dropping off? Things like that. Record keeping. So to me, record keeping is basically everything I'm getting out of my LMS. And for me, the LMS tracking attendance, registration versus attendance, things like that. And then target against goals and ROI. And when I look at my target against goals and my return on investment, it's there. I look at it from a macro level and a micro level. So what are my goals what are my targets annually? What are the big things I'm trying to achieve over the year? And then on a per initiative basis. So if I have a big enablement initiative, for instance, because we're launching a new product and all my technical people need to be upskilled, what are my targets? What is the learning solution that is going to impact the business the most? Excuse me. So I thought I'd take a step back and talk about all of the data sources that I look at to try to come up with my analytics program. And so some of the data sources are not typically sources that a learning organization might look at, but I think it's great to widen your net and to think about it in terms of a very wide digital audience. So obviously, we all use our LMS to get data. If your organization has a knowledge base, in a previous role, I did client-facing training. And so the knowledge base that we offered out to the clients was an excellent source for me to gather data on what the clients wanted to learn about. If you are using agile methodology for development, you can get great data from your agile tool, or if you use a project management tool. Google Analytics. If there's one thing I can get across to this audience today who doesn't look at Google Analytics from a learning perspective, try it. Go in there and get the data, and that's one of the things I'll talk about today. Social tools. vendor sites, and when I say vendor sites, I mean sites that you contract outside of your own learning management system. For instance, we use Pluralsight, Safari, and some other vendor sites to get our learners upskilled on technical skills. Your survey tools, obviously, and then also if you have a Salesforce application or CRM, you can also glean data from there. I put together this chart here just to give you a high-level view of where these particular data sources might fall under the pillars that I defined. So obviously, your learning management system really can track many things, but there are these other tools can fill in some gaps or enhance the data that comes out of your learning management systems. One thing I wanted to note too is that I found you as a learning professional, and I as a learning professional sit within an organization, and we have an LMS administrator that may or may not be part of the IT department. You may have a centralized model or federated, but as I go along this journey and research data and look at trends and things like that, I find that there are certain really useful partners that I've come to know that have helped me establish my data and find things that I'm looking for. So outside of my own organization, whatever people organization you have, so if you're not part of L&D, we're decentralized, so I'm in the technology space, but the learning and development team are great partners of mine. But also marketing, because marketing and training continually overlap in terms of we produce videos that marketing can use as demos, and marketing produces webinars as a tool to produce product awareness. And so we're on a parallel path, and I get great information from them, and we share information back and forth. And again, the IT department, because you need friends there. And I found that by finding the right person in all of these departments who are, data focused, that they will talk about data forever, and that they serve as great partners. So I'm just going to talk about three data sources, and in very simple terms, my experience with how these particular data sources may enhance my analytics program and add value. So the first thing I want to talk about is my LMS, and typically we look at, at least in my organization, we just look at completion rates and things like that. But really, what is the impact on the business if completion rates rise? And we had a problem whereby we were trying to certify people to get onto our help desk to answer client issues. And our certification rates were going down. So when we delved a little bit deeper into the data and we asked the right questions, what we really needed was to shorten the certification cycle down so that the people who were new could get on the phones faster, so the experienced people could then handle the more complex issues, which would lead to a better client experience. So now the discussion became speed to competency when we talked about it in those terms. So we used our analytics to look at where are the trends in the learner data, where are they getting stuck, what is this barrier to completion, and then found what we needed to stop, start, continue to shorten them. And then the result was an increase in speed to competency rates, and that was a huge impact on the business. And really, it came down to assessments. They were the settings on the assessments, let them languish, take them when they wanted. There were no windows that they had to complete them by, and they just didn't. So just tightening that up and moving some of the content forward and around gave us almost 2.5 months of an increase in certification rates. So web analytics, it gathers data that most LMSs can't yet. Some can, and ours is getting there. We use Cornerstone on Demand, and they're getting to an adaptive model, and they've been pushing out some pretty slick releases that I really like. But I still feel that if you take an approach to your learning site like you are a webmaster, like it's a client focused site, and that you need to promote usage and set goals associated with it that way, that you need these web analytics as part of your toolkit. And what it also helps you do is expand your analysis reach to the internet. So I don't just look at what people are doing in my LMS. I cast the net wider, and I look at our intranet, and I see what people are searching for, and if there's a trend in a certain search term or issue, is there a learning solution that I can develop that will meet this need? I also use it to look for upticks in mobile usage or geographic spikes, and that helps me plan ahead for maybe and it gives me an argument when I'm trying to push for money for a mobile solution, right? So I take all this data and I massage it, and I say, look at this trend in our mobile usage for our audience. It was only 10% in 2016. We're at 30% now. So we need to really move on this. And so with that, I just would like to emphasize that definitely Google Analytics, you can get in there and you can get data, but it's the data and the analysis is specific to your business needs and your audience needs, just like any kind of learning solution is as well. So take some time to get in there, and some of the things that I would recommend right off the bat looking at would be your search terms, um, where your learners are dropping off, so you can follow this trend here where your drop offs are and where your highest drop offs are, and that may not be a bad thing. You may say, well, they searched, they found what they were getting, they stayed in there for 2 minutes, it was a 2-minute video, then they dropped off. That's good, that's what I want, that's a benchmark I'm needing. Or they go into a search box and they just drop off, they didn't find what they needed. That's an issue, and you want to address that. So there's some data that can help you plan and talk about what your learners need moving forward. Take advantage of importable free dashboards and start small and simple. And then another experience that I wanted to share about using data from a source that we don't typically use is a knowledge base. So um, we did an analysis on what our knowledge base questions were, and we found at least 5 learning solutions associated with the top articles in the knowledge base. So some people go into a knowledge base, they can work through whatever step procedure there is, but some people are visual learners, and if you put a 2-minute video in there, they're going to consume that and apply it right away. Um, so now you have a knowledge query, the training video results, the video is consumed, the knowledge is applied, and then as a result, the impact to the business is that help calls are reduced. So those are the 3 scenarios I wanted to discuss in simple terms and give you something that could be actionable and an example of how it impacts the business and its value. In terms of developing analytics programs in the journey that I'm about to embark on here, and then in my previous journey, which was an enormous analytics program because we were revenue generating, so that you can imagine what you need to do there. But always, some of the fundamentals that I follow are to always deliver learning solutions that solve business problems, and the analytics will present themselves. What you need to display to the business. Define your ROI model. It takes some time, and when I say define your ROI model, I mean, compile how much you're spending annually on tools, how much you're spending annually on your LMS, how much you're spending on per hour on a FTE, a full-time employee, and come up with a formula for what it takes for you to develop certain types of learning per hour, and use that number to continually prove your ROI, what you're spending, and compare it to what you're getting back. Define analytics in the planning stages. So always, when you're even the smallest learning solution, talk about what you're going to report out to show you're meeting targets against goals. Make analytics a part of your daily conversation with anyone and everyone. So anytime I'm in a meeting discussing learning with people that work for me, with my partners, with my superiors or the leadership, I talk about, well, the analytics are telling us this, and we are doing this based on this data. And here's the data to show you how much value we're bringing to you. And finally, I think we've all heard this, tell a story, make it interesting. And that is it.
That's awesome. You had a very good overview and some great insights. One of the questions that came in was, are you open to sharing this presentation after the event?
Absolutely. I made it, that's why it's so generic. I made it generic. So yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to get started on our next panelist is Matthew McCarville. Matthew is currently with PwC in a strategic, analytical, and managerial role that involves everything from managing a highly educated global L&D analytics team, developing automated reports, interactive dashboards, and data visualizations with, and I apologize here, Matthew, SPSS, SAS, MicroStrategy, RStudio, Excel, Power BI tools, and Tableau, to data mining with SQL, Teradata, designing, developing new L&D approaches and metrics, and designing research methods to evaluate a broad range of global adult learning interventions. Prior to this role, he managed a Fortune 150 railroad global operations analytics team and their international software commercialization team. Matthew is also an adjunct professor and completing the doctorate in business administration program and strategy and business intelligence analytics. He has also received an MS in business intelligence analytics, an MBA in management and IT, plus a master's certification in agile and waterfall project management at Creighton University. Then at MIT, he completed a professional certificate in big data collection, processing, and storage. At Boise State, professional certificate in descriptive data analytics with Excel Power BI tools. And finally, through Georgia Tech executive program, the Business Analytics Leveraging Strategic Data Certificate. Matthew, how in the heck do you work and get all this done?
My wife would ask the same thing.
Oh my goodness.
So,
I'm going to pull up the site that you wanted me to pull up and bring this up.
I don't have a PowerPoint prepared. I kind of joined up here at the last second, so apologize for that. But I did send her a link that everybody can go to. That you're welcome to share that link as well, Nicole. So like she said, I've got my hand going in 5, 6 different things right now. So my day job is working for PricewaterhouseCoopers, both externally and internally on their data science on global learning and development team. And in the evenings, I'm a joint professor at Creighton University here in Omaha in their College of Business. I teach a handful of different classes, including marketing analytics and Tableau, SQL, Power BI, advanced Excel, macros, Visual Basic type things, LinkedIn analytics, social media analytics, and advertising, as well as at Georgia Tech in their exec ed program. So I can go more into that if anybody has any questions on that. That is open to anybody at Georgia Tech. So I've even traveled with that program. I've brought that to Omaha. They're welcome to go to other cities. And I mean, it's an extremely impressive program if anybody's company is looking at getting an analytics boost. And it's built from the executive mindset where They know they need to talk about all this stuff that we just went over in the last PowerPoint. They know they need analytics. They know they need to understand how to get to the next point they need to in their strategy, but they don't know how to do it. And they don't know what the data scientists are saying. So a lot of it is talking about analytics maturity. It's talking about how do you develop and manage a data asset, or how do you manage a data resource? What does it mean when somebody coins themselves a data scientist? And what are the platforms you need to understand? So it's from a higher level. And a lot of times that is what people need. It's the perfect fit for a lot of situations. As far as my day job goes at PwC, I travel often to the international offices. We work with a lot of external and internal sources. Definitely LMS systems, a lot of commonalities in what the previous panelist there was going over. A lot of it's being driven by return on investment right now. A lot of it's being driven by data warehouse. How do we get one common resource where all of our data globally is in one place and everybody has access to it? We're increasing the amount of self-service. We're trying to be tool agnostic, just like the last panelist said. I mean, we use multiple different things. We use MicroStrategy a lot, of course, Tableau for a lot of dashboards. With our international offices, they use Watershed, Metrics That Matter, so we use a lot of that. PeopleSoft. We also partner. We have our L&D website is called Vantage when you join PwC, and it's a super site of internal and external resources. So PwC, we have a lot of auditors. We have a lot of people that do a lot of public brand certifications and need external verified credits to continue those. So we provide those by internal instructors. We also provide those with external instructors. I'm one of those for both the Georgia Tech program and internally. And then we partner with external resources like Coursera. And you can go ahead and pull that link up, Nicole. And what we figured out when I joined is now we're going to incorporate this Coursera program that they used internally to just offer to internal employees at first to everyone. So Nicole, I'm not sure if you can pull it up, and there you go. Everybody can go to this. So it has just recently been opened to anyone out there, and they're going to be using it as a recruiting tool. So some L&D solutions that we have now developed internally, we have now found avenues in order to increase the retention on our employees, or in order to even increase recruiting efforts and make it easier. We now have a targeted audience that are obviously, they are interested in PwC at some point. And so they'll go and complete this smarter analysis, decisions with data analysis, which gives you from a L&D approach, from a finance and accounting approach, from a managerial approach, a way to understand what PwC targets and their methodologies in measuring metrics and measuring return on investment and measuring dashboards, how to get key metrics, what KPIs are you developing. So we have now opened up internal resources that we developed in our L&D in order to even bring in more people and open up that spotlight and even share the tactics and methodologies that we use. So anybody's welcome to go to that Coursera. It's kind of become an interesting tool. And it's kind of required for all the L&D people. I'm even going to be incorporating that into some of the undergraduate classes I teach to use parts of that in order to get them to the level that they hopefully should be at graduation, or they're at that PwC, or they're at the Big Four level when it comes to their ability to understand how to approach L&D measurement, or how to approach consulting measurement when it comes to dashboards. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to shoot those out. I don't have a PowerPoint, so I'm sure you may have a bunch of random questions. Some of the things that really drive us right now, just got off a big call with the international team, is accepting the imperfections in our data. So we know that our data isn't perfect, and everybody that is on this call knows that you always have problems with your data, whether you're doing internal L&D or you're measuring key performance indicators. You have to accept that, and you have to be transparent, you have to move forward. And that was part of our reason where huge projects are getting held up, huge dashboards are getting held up for what seem to be minute issues. You know, you get down to the data elements and you're realizing that people aren't tracking their data when they fly internationally, or when they check in from the Pittsburgh office and fly to Paris, or there's certain small things that are holding up big dashboards and efforts. And I'm sure we've all been there, and we've all seen small things hold up big efforts. But accepting those imperfections and just being transparent about those has really helped our L&D from a mentality that we can accept things and move forward and get things done in more of that agile fashion. The utilization of different tools is something that we are definitely heavily analyzing at this point in time. So at a firm level, where does it make sense for us to deviate from a tool? If you get a certain amount of reduction in usage, if you get a certain amount of licenses that are being utilized, how do you measure tool acceptance and tool absorption in your workforce to make sure that they're using these tools that are, I mean, let's use Tableau, let's use any of these analytics tools. SAS, SPSS, R. R is free, but there are platforms that use R that integrate into it that cost a heavy amount of money in licensing, getting different fees and different sites, and how many do you buy. Now, we've done a lot of analysis on that to make sure that we're getting the proper amount for what our workforce is really interested in. So how do you gauge that? Previous panelists talked about if you share content and you're trying to get videos out there, you're trying to get instruction out there, how do you make sure that they're completing that? So we've broken down data elements that show when they start their videos, when they get to the middle of the video, when they get to the end of the video. Did they just open it and close it and think they can trick the system in order to get credit for viewing a required learning management tool? Whatever it may be, especially compliance-driven things, we have to make sure these people are going 100% through the curriculum that we've designed and spent so much time to make sure they're getting that information. So a lot of it is going down to those data elements and making sure they're all there to properly measure success. And whatever your definition of success is for your silo or for the company that you're at, and understanding that it goes all the way down to those data elements. Because a lot of times, if you have a large international database like what we do at PwC, you have issues that trick up things. They weren't designed in this way. That you have to attach things from different databases. They don't match. You may not have the employee ID in one, but you do in the other. And so you can run into these issues that inherently stop the business from proceeding. So getting to the point where you understand those and trying to get ahead of those. Obviously, if you're at the point where you're redesigning things, you have the ability to open up the books and really look at doing things in best practice methodologies. That's what PwC's really started to do. How can we inform our L&D department internationally on best practices, database design, dashboard design, KPIs, whatever it may be? We're trying to be those pioneers on best practices, and we're trying to identify what does it mean to have a best practice. So, and if there's anybody has any questions on platforms, on anything they do, or different angles, point of views, let me know, and I can even talk about the academic side of things and different classes and different opportunities there. But I also teach in this Coursera platform that's up on the screen. So I'd rather open it up to Q&A here and do what everybody's interested in.
You mentioned imperfections with data. That's always going to exist. So isn't that more, especially when you talk L&D, isn't it more about trending, taking a look at the trends within the organization rather than drilling down to the specifics per se?
Well, we do have the specific side, but trends are obviously something that we measure. Year-over-year analysis is huge with us. When you're measuring curriculums, when you're measuring platforms, when you're measuring the training provided, especially the high expense training where you're flying people into one location. We do that often here at PwC. We fly them all into Atlanta or Orlando, New York City or LA, and you fly 300 people and you're paying for housing and travel and food and the instructors that are at that level. You're talking about some pretty heavy expense resources. So you're talking large expense programs, and year-over-year analysis are people actually getting the information and changing whatever behaviors targeted in that training post that training, whether it's compliance driven, whether it's targeted on a certain platform that you want people to understand, or a change in behavior. How do you come up with those metrics on that year-over-year analysis to make sure you're actually having an effect on the L&D? So yes, absolutely. The trends are a big component of how we measure things. But a lot of times, in order to get that trend information, you have to get down to the elements to make sure you're measuring it accurately.
I agree that you do have to accept those imperfections in your data, because you would have to backtrack for years and years into rat holes you can't go down to get perfect data. And then, but the other thing is that I do trending data is so valuable, and if you need to really look at things from that perspective, not myopically.
There are a few questions that came in that Siobhan, you answered directly, and I'd like to open that up in case Matthew has any thoughts on that too.
Sure.
Maria had asked, how do you map your metrics back to the business bottom line? And I think that kind of touches on what we just talked about, but maybe if there's more that you'd like to share specifically, but do it as part of the recording so others can hear that as well.
So coming up with every company is going to have their own way that they measure this. Every company's going to have their own elements that they're looking at, especially international versus domestic or even regional businesses. So looking at the details as to what is important in measurements of success and defining your own version of success. And then making sure you have the elements there that you can put them together and get that metric and get those data together and measure them accurately to define and inform your success going forward. And then going back to our trending discussion, how do you measure that? Do you do month over month for a quarter? Do you do year over year? Do you do quarterly? There's different ways that you can chunk that out to really get to the level of analyzation that makes sense for your company. So a lot of things we do month over month. We do quarter over quarter. We want to see how we've progressed in those smaller chunks. But of course, you have the year over year trends. And how did we do at the entire calendar year of 16 versus 17? We have all sorts of metrics that measure them at different levels. So it really depends on your business. And I didn't want to get buried out in exactly what we do at PwC, because companies before I went to PwC did things completely differently. Running operations analytics, we did all their PeopleSoft analytics. We did everything for the railroad. But they have an extremely different business model than what I do now. So we analyze different things. We look at it differently. Turnover, attrition, all sorts of different things are measured in very different ways.
So I haven't been able to get to the bottom line and do that. I would love to get there. And the way we do it is we align everything that we do with our corporate goals. So anytime we have an initiative or we map it and say, okay, this falls under this particular corporate goal. And then we come up with some analytics and targets for what success looks like. So that's how we do it. But I would love to get there. We're not there yet.
I just wanted to add on one thing. So where I am now, we're taking on more of an agile mentality. I don't know if it's Nicole or
Siobhan.
Or who said that?
Siobhan.
So it was you, Siobhan. We're looking at it from an agile mentality because we're using that definition of done. I ran agile development teams, and I did Scrum Master and Product Owner and all of that. With that mentality, breaking it up into smaller chunks and having that definition of done at smaller levels, it makes it a little easier to swallow these larger projects. Instead of a 9-month project plan or an 18-month project, you're looking at things from a weekly basis, from a larger chunk of project basis, from how we get this dashboard done. You're redefining definition of done as you proceed through a larger project, and having that agile mentality helps. It even helps the internal team with a mentality of success and something achieved as you continue through it. And it takes away that defeatist attitude when you have this 18-month huge project. And in L&D, everybody knows you're always redoing things. You're always coming up with these great ideas, but some of them take time. Redefining your definition of done to smaller, acceptable chunks is an easier way to get that and get your team behind it.
Ryan submits a question. He asks, how do you use the LMS to determine how long someone has stayed in a video?
So we spent some time trying to figure that out. Yeah, exactly. They all give you back different data. So we have a platform that gives us back API data. It's an API feed, the Watershed, and what they're doing is giving us when they hit certain time marks. So what we're doing is a 50% of the video mark is the middle point. It is amazing how many people think that they're tricking the system, especially with compliance videos. We see this just trending, especially with newer associates. They think they can open the video, play it for a minute, and then check it off. And we have these timestamps. So we're able to see when they opened it, and then we know how long the video is. So we have an estimation of 50% complete, and we check that off. And then we have an estimation of finished, and we check that off. So they do kind of have a credit associated with a percentage of time completed on the video. That's been successful for us. We'll see, like Siobhan said, I mean, every LMS system is different. Every LMS system gives you different formats of data, and they measure things differently. So that worked for us in this unique situation.
So I would say something I've found to be very helpful and gave me consistency in data. We posted a lot of we started using Vimeo as a video server, and their analytics were very accurate and helpful in terms of how long people were in the video and when they dropped off. And then you can also use Google Analytics to do that. You can identify a URL, input a goal. It's very, very easy. Say the goal is that you want the user to watch it for 30 seconds, and that equals completion. And then you can continually monitor that via your dashboard. So those are two other solutions that you can do it outside the LMS. I do find our LMS is getting better at it, but it's still clunky.
He responded that he's using Cornerstone if you have experience.
As am I. So yeah.
Yep. Cornerstone and Content Sphere are two of the ones that we use also. Yeah. And any external ones, like you were talking about, you can use Google Analytics. We use TED Talks as an external source for a lot of referred material outside of our internally developed content management. And they provide you with the same thing Google Analytics will provide you. So yeah, it's just integrating those measurements and knowing what tools to integrate in and how they measure things.
What weighting do you give to lead versus lag measures?
Siobhan, I'll let you grab that one.
So, you know, I'm not even considering the lead versus the lag measure, but that's actually a very good point.
We try and bring it in, and when being aware that something exists is kind of a quarter of that battle, right? So we know on the ones that have those issues how we can address it, but we are not putting that as a large component of our analysis right now, because right now we're able to kind of that effect is kind of diluted. So for us to measure that, we haven't necessarily put that as a leading measurement and making sure that that is a big component. We are aware it exists. We're aware of the different platforms that have those issues. Kind of similar to what Siobhan said.
What are some of the ways that you're using measure experiential learning impact on return on investment? And are you pulling in data feeds from outside of your LMS to feed data results?
We are not very good at tracking experiential learning. And that is something that we have to get better at. I mean, we let people self-report too, and then we do, you know, we do assessments on what they're applying from their learning, but we don't have a program around experiential learning, like a particular goal or a particular program, which is something that, you know, we should work toward. And I have many disparate sources of data, and I don't have a BI tool. So I used to use Tableau, which I loved. So I'm using Excel right now to pull everything in.
So we absolutely have disparate sources of data come from 100 different directions, especially if you separate out the global offices from the U.S. offices and then include all of the data laws that go into internationally, and Germany and UK versus the US on data laws are just different worlds. So we have all different tools that all these people are using, all these different sources that everybody are trying to merge together. So we've started something this year called a digital fitness assessment, where we try and gauge experiential learning. We try and gauge it as a series of questions where we can get data, we can try and find insights, and we can promote those results to people and to partners and help them with promotional tracks and help inform their individual journey as to collecting all of these things they're doing that we may not be tracking internally. You know, how have they on their own tried to gain education and experience, especially in the technology world? That's kind of difficult to track right now. A lot of people go and they do their own thing, and they'll go do one of those edX classes. So this week we had somebody that did an MIT corporate innovation edX, and they had never even informed their boss they were doing it. But when we did this digital fitness assessment, we were able to bring that out and collect that kind of data and inform the people on the promotional track that they were going out above and beyond what their job required in order to gain experience and gain those levels of information they needed to be successful at their role. So we're trying, and you're always going to have to adapt to the environment that you're in. But disparate data sources are always going to be an issue.
A couple more questions. I think these kind of go a little bit, are pretty close to each other, so I'll ask them both at the same time. What other analytics systems would you suggest to use to track the video viewing? And how do you measure the impact of mobile and microlearning?
So, like I said, I had been using Vimeo, and then we have a proprietary video streaming technology here, and so I can track some analytics there, but and also Cornerstone On Demand, it appears, is starting to track some video. And then you can use also Google Analytics. So it depends really on what your organization has available to you and what is easiest for you to use given the expertise in your group. So if you have people that are comfortable with web analytics and comfortable with those types of tools, then you can probably use anything, but I would go with the lowest barrier to entry that you can find. And I would suggest Vimeo. And then what was the second half of the question? I'm sorry.
And how are you measuring the impact of microlearning and mobile and microlearning?
So for us, mobile learning is something that we're working toward. We don't have a responsive design in Cornerstone On Demand, which the release that's coming out in November apparently will be responsive. So we don't even target. I look at those mobile numbers to see where they're headed, but we don't have a mobile program right now. My past position or company that I was at, we did have one, and we tracked usage, typical usage scenarios.
Matthew,
I'm going to agree with you, Siobhan. Yeah, on everything you said. I mean, we have Cornerstone, we have Content Sphere, and we have Watershed API that are doing some analysis. In this very unique position that I'm in at PwC, 99% of the people that work here have mobile devices owned by the firm. So we can put software on there that allow us to track them. That is a very unique situation, right? That doesn't fit. I mean, at Union Pacific before, we were able to do very similar thing, but it was much less of a take up on having a corporate owned device than where we are now. But in that same sense, we've developed this Vantage site that we've termed, in anything from that. Once they are logged into that, even if they're on their phone, we have a mobile app that is essentially just a cover to going to the website, but it allows us to track their usage and where they're going on a mobile platform. So we're able, for a partner that's in the air and he opens up the app on a Delta airline, it will track on his iPad where he's been and what videos they've watched. We're able to collect all that streaming data. So it all depends on how you put that together. We were luckily in a position that most of our workforce has corporate-owned devices, so we can install software that tracks that and require that in order for them to do any continuing education or anything, we can put that software and that tracking into the application. For micro-learning, we're trying to embrace it. You saw that Coursera. We're trying to integrate things in. We're trying to partner with MIT and Harvard on their edX platforms in order to even offer things that would be very much like that Coursera. It would be co-branded. It would be an opportunity for us to increase the education on our workforce, as well as an opportunity for us to recruit, which is how this Coursera platform has really developed into. It kind of was unintendedly turned into a recruiting tool. So we're trying to embrace that because that's where people are going.
Just a few more minutes left, so if there are any other questions, please go ahead and submit them. I do have a follow-up to the league versus lag measures. Maria mentions that all the examples you mentioned are lag measures. Do you track any lead measures?
We kind of try and think of them together, right? So the lead measures are kind of on the predictive nature, right? They lead to the accomplishment of that lag measure, that goal. So you can influence with them, you can do something about something and kind of get predictive on there. So predictive analytics, predictive behavior modeling, that's kind of a lot of things we're doing right now. Now, it could be just as simple as doing a pop-up along with that video and embedding something that says, you have not made it to the 3/4. So you're trying to be ahead of things. You're trying to predict behavior. If they go to exit, maybe you stop it. If they are 50% way through and say, are you aware you are only this percentage, and it will be tracked as that. Anything we can do to try and influence that behavior, we're trying to get ahead of. We're trying to model those predictive behaviors with any of this analytics, the deep analytics and the trends. You can get ahead of that, right? So if you see half of your workforce is only getting to 50% of your compliance videos, how do you enforce or how do you get ahead of it? Well, maybe you start doing things that predict that 50% of these people are going to do it, or maybe you get to the user level and know that this person has habitually done that. And you can start with pop-ups. You can start with things. You can make sure that they're aware. You can increase the information awareness on those. So we're aware of it. We're trying to get into that predictive behavior and predictive modeling, but you have to have the right data in order to understand what you have to get ahead of. So it's kind of a cycle.
What I would say is, in my position right now, we're not there yet. We're definitely at a more in an infancy stage, and in terms of predictiveness, that we have done like taxonomies and looked at what our search terms are, and then try to tag our our learning assets with the search terms that match, the tags that match the search terms and things like that.
We only have just a couple more minutes, and I want to share a great thank you to everyone for attending today, and to both Matthew and Siobhan for sharing your perspectives and your experience. Do you have any final thoughts to share before we close up?
I do have one. I recently just read an article about all of these analytics associated with education, and the author of this article is very concerned that we are too hyper-focused on analytics when it comes to learning, and that really we always should be taking a step back and considering the fact that there's this human interaction, emotional attachment to learning, and then don't always, be so focused on the analytics that we lose sight of that. And so that would be my last comment on analytics.
Is that a link you could share with me or copy?
Yeah, I can.
I would love to read it and share it as part of the follow-up to the webinar.
Okay.
Matthew, any final comments from you?
I am kind of I don't put it on my title there, but I'm a LinkedIn open networker. So if anybody wants to go on LinkedIn, I post a lot of jobs in front of a lot of recruiters. So I do a lot of liking and sharing of different types of L&D roles, of different kinds of analytics roles, who's interested in anything along that line, or also L&D education and analytics education, being on the teaching side as well. So if anybody wants information on that, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everyone, for attending today. It's been a very interesting discussion. And I want to invite you to our next event, which will be on emerging technologies in learning and development on November 1st from 12 Central or 1 Eastern. And I welcome you to join us then. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.